Welcome to another underrated or overrated, and this is number 11. Once again, if you have any suggestions for this series, send me a message. That's pretty much how all of these come about, and I want to be able to answer all the questions you might have. So let's dive into number 11, and we've got some good topics here. One, you should be on the throttle as early as possible. Two, gearing your bike at a track to max out in sixth gear. And the last one's a good one. Does being a coach make you slower? So let's just address them and we'll rate them underrated or overrated. The first one, you should be on the throttle as early as possible. And when we look at that one, in theory, yeah, that is correct. The idea of like, okay, we should be accelerating as early as possible. But there's, again, just like a lot of these sort of generalized catchphrases, that it doesn't take the whole picture into consideration. So should you be on the throttle as early as possible? Yes, you should. But we also have to make sure we're respecting where direction is. In other words, where we're in a position to be able to accelerate as safely as possible. The other part of it is, though, we need to be making sure that we're taking advantage of the entry as much as possible, because it's possible to overslow the entry and get a better drive. And now, but you've lost time on the entry. So remember what this is all about. It's about getting to the slow point and getting away from the slow point in the least amount of time possible. So you have to look at the whole picture. So should you be on the throttle as early as possible? Yes. But you also want to take into consideration what the entry looks like, and are you doing everything that you can to get in and out of the slow point as quickly as possible. So yeah, this one's overrated, and it's overrated because it's way too simplified. Yeah, you should be on the throttle as early as possible. Yeah, duh. But we're not taking into consideration many of the other parts. You know, where's our vehicle placement? Are we taking advantage of what that entry has to offer, et cetera, et cetera? So there you go. Second one, gearing your bike at a track to max out in sixth gear. This is kind of a old school wives' tale. You should be maxing out sixth gear on the straightaways. Yeah, and the bottom line is, yeah, that is also very, very overrated. So there's so many things to consider about that. And it's not as much bike specific as it used to be, especially maybe with a little bit of a lower horsepower bike. Nowadays, bikes make more power, a lot more torque, and what's important is having the gearing right for the different corners. You know, how you're accelerating, especially out of some of the slower corners. What gear are you in? What RPM are you at? Are you having to make a shift before the next corner? So there's a lot of other considerations that go into play here. And some of it can be a rider preference as well. Some riders are going to want a long second, some want a short third, or whatever it might be. And there's a little bit of preference there. But when we look at gearing, we're going to look at it as how the bike is coming off the slower corners, what the minimum RPMs are, and then how much shifting that we're doing. And sixth gear almost has nothing to do with the equation. There's some tracks, even on a 600, like, I mean, there's times at Road America, there's no sixth gear at Road America on a 600. So no, we're not taking that into consideration, because there's other parts of the track where, say, maxing out third gear or second gear in a particular section is more important. The last one, does being a coach make you slower? I think my answer is going to surprise you here. So when I started to really dive into the coaching world, the bottom line is coaching did make me slower. And it made me slower because I was thinking about my riding more. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What can I do to improve? Is the language that I'm using consistent with what I'm doing on track? And same as I went through a lot of the methodology that's being developed, is I would spend a lot of time in my head with it, especially on the vision side and the brake side. So yeah, the bottom line is, initially being a coach made me slower, but I still wanted to be fast. So how did I fix that? And the way that I fix it is when I rode for myself, I would work really on my feel references. And this is actually where a lot of the feel references were developed. Is how do I get up to speed quickly? Is being able to, what's my brake pressure at turn in? What's my good exit feel like? How's the bike going from side to side? At what speed am I getting? When am I getting on my knee? So I wanted to be able to get up to speed as quickly as possible. And especially with as few laps as I get to run for myself, but I still want to go, I still want to ride very quickly. So it took me time to develop that skill by essentially training for it. And I would be deliberate. I would say, okay, great. I've got 6 laps to myself. How am I going to accomplish this? Okay, I'm going to work on my brake pressure turn in. I'm going to work on my exit. When is my knee hitting the ground? How quickly am I starting to move my eyes? Things like that. And that would get me up to speed much, much faster. So now if it's my bike and I understand the track, I can get up to speed relatively quickly now, regardless of what speed I'm coaching at. But it took me a lot of work to make it there. And the last part of that is I still lack running the lean angle that I need to run for probably the last 5% of pace. It still takes me a little while to be able to get comfortable with that lean angle. So does being a coach make you slower? Yeah, I think that's underrated. I think it is difficult. It's certainly something that you can overcome, but you do have to work with it, work on that particular skill, differentiating between working with somebody and then going out and running laps for yourself. So there you go, underrated or overrated number 11.